I never thought my life could shatter so quickly. One moment, I was just another man blending into the endless rhythm of the city, living alone in a modest apartment, drowning in office deadlines and routine. The next moment, everything I believed about myself, my identity, my freedom, my sense of control, was torn away. I was left staring into a mirror that reflected someone I barely recognized. My name is Alex. All my life I've been cautious, careful about how I present myself, careful about the things I say, careful about what I allow people to see. Like most people, I carried secrets, but mine lived deep inside a quiet, hidden part of my life. They were personal, private, and strangely exhilarating, thoughts that made my heart pound whenever I let myself dwell on them too long. For as long as I can remember, I've been fascinated with dressing as someone else. Not as a joke or a passing curiosity, but as a way to explore a softer side of myself that felt delicate and strangely empowering. At first it was harmless, something I only did when I was alone. A borrowed skirt, a wig carefully adjusted in front of the mirror, a sweater that felt softer than anything in my own wardrobe. Behind closed doors, I could breathe differently. I could exist as someone who felt both unfamiliar and deeply connected to me. But my life wasn't empty. There was someone who could destroy that fragile world if she ever discovered it. Mia. My girlfriend. Mia had the kind of beauty that made people stop talking mid-sentence. She was sharp, confident, and intimidating in the way only truly perceptive people can be. Nothing escaped her attention. She had a talent for seeing through pretenses, as if masks simply didn't work around her. I loved her deeply, and because of that, I feared what she might think if she ever discovered my secret. My apartment was small but comfortable. Warm lighting filled the rooms, and the faint scent of vanilla candles lingered in the air, candles I had bought for Mia months ago during one of our early dates. It had become my safe place, the one environment where I could lower every guard. The bedroom held my most guarded secret. Tucked neatly in the corner was a small collection of clothes I never spoke about, dresses, tights, accessories, each one carefully organized by color and texture. I had spent hours arranging them, treating them almost like treasures. When I looked in the mirror wearing them, it wasn't just a reflection staring back. It felt like stepping through a doorway into another version of myself. That evening had been exhausting. Work had drained every ounce of energy from me. Emails, reports, endless conversations that blurred together into the usual office monotony. But Mia had left town to visit her parents, which meant I had the apartment to myself. And with that came the familiar temptation. The quiet thrill of secrecy stirred in my chest. Tonight, I told myself I would allow that hidden side of me to exist again. I carefully chose the outfit, running my fingers over fabrics until I settled on a silky blouse and a fitted black skirt. My hands trembled slightly as I changed, the cool material brushing against my skin in a way that felt both thrilling and forbidden. Standing in front of the mirror, I adjusted the blouse and smoothed the skirt over my hips. Every small movement felt like stepping further away from the version of Alex the world knew. Makeup came next. Slowly, carefully, I applied it, highlighting my cheekbones, adding a subtle shade to my lips, softening my eyes until my reflection looked gentler, almost vulnerable. When I finally looked up, the person staring back at me felt unfamiliar, yet strangely captivating. For a moment, the careful, guarded man I'd always been seemed to disappear. In his place stood someone bolder, softer, freer in a way I rarely allowed myself to feel. But the excitement carried an undercurrent of fear. What if Mia came home early? What if someone discovered this hidden life? The same thrill that made my heart race also filled my chest with anxious tension. I sat down on the edge of the bed, crossing my legs as the heels tapped softly against the floor. The quiet sound echoed through the room. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mia. Instead of relief, a knot formed in my stomach as I read it. Have fun tonight. The words felt strangely loaded, almost knowing. How could she possibly understand how close I was to losing myself in this moment? My fingers hovered over the screen, unsure of how to respond. Because the deeper truth was impossible to ignore. The secrecy was intoxicating. But so was the danger of being discovered. The danger wasn't just the secret itself. It was the constant fear that someone might uncover it. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about life before Mia, before this apartment, before the quiet little world I had built where my hidden side could breathe. I remembered the long nights in my childhood bedroom when the house was silent and everyone else was asleep. I would open the old wooden dresser where my mother kept her forgotten cosmetics and experiment with them in secret. A little lipstick, a touch of powder, moments that felt confusing, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. Back then, I didn't understand what those feelings meant. All I knew was that they were powerful and impossible to ignore. When the morning came, I would wipe everything away and pretend none of it had happened. Those memories had always stayed buried somewhere deep inside me. Until recently. Now the urge had returned stronger than ever, pulling me toward a line I had never fully acknowledged before. And tonight, I had stepped across it without realizing how far I had gone. What I didn't know was that the door I had opened quietly was about to be kicked wide open. Violently. Irreversibly. Standing in front of the mirror, adjusting the wig carefully over my hair, I felt a strange shiver crawl down my spine. Excitement danced with unease inside my chest. It felt almost as if something unseen was watching, waiting for the exact second when everything would change. I couldn't possibly have known that the moment had already arrived. In only a few hours, my world would collapse. My secret would no longer belong to me. And I would be forced to face a reality so twisted and surreal that I could never have imagined it in my worst nightmares. A life I never asked for. A body I never chose. But at that moment, none of that had happened yet. I simply sat quietly in my apartment, legs crossed on the edge of the bed, my pulse racing as I studied the unfamiliar reflection in the mirror. It felt like the beginning of something. I just didn't realize what kind of beginning it was. Morning arrived gently. Golden sunlight spread across the quiet streets, painting everything in a calm that felt almost deceptive. Birds chirped from the trees, joggers moved along the sidewalks, and the city carried on with its usual rhythm. To anyone else, it looked like an ordinary day. But inside my chest, something felt wrong. A tension coiled tighter and tighter with every step I took. Today felt different. Not like I was choosing to cross a line. More like something was about to drag me across it. I walked quickly down the sidewalk, trying to ignore the heavy feeling pressing on my thoughts. My backpack hung over my shoulder, strangely heavy even though it only held a few basic things. I kept my eyes down, blending into the crowd of commuters heading to work. Ordinary people. Ordinary lives. No one noticed the unease tightening my shoulders or the nervous way I kept scanning the street around me. Maybe it was paranoia. Or maybe it wasn't. Because the strange feeling that someone was watching me refused to go away. The truth was, my life had always been a delicate balance of routine and secrecy. On the surface, I was just Alex, a quiet office worker. Punctual. Polite. Easy to overlook. But beneath that normal exterior was the part of me I never allowed anyone to see. The fascination with dressing differently. Skirts, makeup, clothes that transformed me into someone softer, someone braver. It was my escape, my private world. Most mornings followed the same predictable pattern: coffee, breakfast, the walk to work. But today that routine never had the chance to begin. Because before I even realized what was happening, everything changed. I didn't notice the van at first. It was parked too close to the curb, its dark windows reflecting the pale glow of the morning sun. It blended into the street so well that I barely registered it as I walked past. Then suddenly, a hand shot out. Strong fingers grabbed my arm and yanked me sideways. Before I could shout or react, I was dragged inside the vehicle. The door slammed shut behind me. Darkness swallowed the space instantly. The windows were completely blacked out, sealing off the outside world. Panic exploded through my chest as I struggled against the hands holding me down. But strangely mixed with the fear was something else. A flicker of excitement that I couldn't explain. My heart pounded wildly as the van lurched forward, speeding through the streets. For a long moment no one spoke. I could feel eyes on me in the darkness, watching as I fought uselessly against the restraints binding my wrists. Then finally, a voice broke the silence.
Calm.
Cold. Completely in control. You don't need to struggle, the voice said smoothly. Soon enough, you'll understand. I froze. There was something terrifying about the certainty in that tone. No anger. No urgency. Just quiet authority, as if everything had already been decided. Fear tightened around my chest like a vice. And in that moment, a horrifying realization crept into my mind. Everything I had hidden, every secret thought, every private experiment, was about to be dragged into the open. And I had absolutely no way to stop it. Eventually, the van slowed. The engine rumbled as it turned and came to a stop in front of a building I had never seen before. The back doors swung open. Cold morning air rushed inside. What stood before me didn't look like a house, or an office, or anything familiar. The structure was tall and sterile.
Steel. Glass.
Sharp edges reflecting the rising sunlight. It looked cold, industrial, unwelcoming. My stomach twisted as they forced me out of the van and pushed me toward the entrance. The doors slid open automatically. The moment I stepped inside, a sharp scent hit my nose. Antiseptic, metal, and something else, something unfamiliar that made my skin crawl. This wasn't someone's home.
It wasn't even an office building.
It was a laboratory, or at least something very much like one. The air felt too clean, too controlled. Every step echoed against the polished floors as they guided me deeper into the building. And with every step, the terrible realization grew stronger in my mind. Whatever was about to happen to me, it had been planned long before I ever noticed that van. They forced me down into a metal chair and tightened the restraints around my wrists and chest. The straps dug into my skin, deliberately uncomfortable, leaving no room for movement. My heartbeat roared in my ears like distant thunder. Around me, the people in the room moved with calm efficiency. They adjusted switches, studied glowing monitors, and exchanged silent glances, as if everything unfolding was part of a routine procedure. No one rushed. No one hesitated. Finally, one of them spoke. "You've spent years living two lives," the man said, his tone almost conversational. "Secrets, curiosities, private indulgences you thought no one would ever discover." My throat tightened. How could he possibly know? Every hidden moment, every experiment I had guarded so carefully felt suddenly exposed. "That ends today," he continued. Fear tightened its grip on me, yet beneath it something strange stirred, an uneasy anticipation I couldn't explain. Then the words came, quiet and chilling. "You're going to become her." My stomach dropped. "And there will be no way back." "What?" I croaked, barely able to force the word out. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, someone placed a tray beside me.
Clothes.
Stockings. Skirts. Makeup. Delicate shoes. My breath caught. They were exactly the kinds of things I had once hidden away in my apartment, my private collection, my secret escape. Now, they were laid out like instructions. "You will wear them," the voice said calmly. "You will adapt. You will learn what it means to exist as someone entirely different." My eyes stayed fixed on the tray. The soft fabric. The pale powders. The fragile heels. My hands trembled as I reached forward. Part of me wanted to refuse. To fight. To scream. But another part of me, one I had spent years denying, felt a dangerous curiosity. How had it come to this? How had something so private become a prison? I fumbled awkwardly with the blouse, pulling it over myself with stiff, uncertain movements. The fabric brushed my skin in a way that sent a strange shock through my body. Fear twisted inside me, but so did something else. When I glanced toward the polished steel surface of a nearby table, my distorted reflection stared back. Not quite Alex. Something softer. Something uncertain. The observers watched without speaking. Their silence felt clinical, analytical. Every movement I made was measured and recorded. Never in my secret moments at home had I felt this exposed. And yet, the sensation carried an undeniable rush. "Good," the voice said quietly. "Now we begin." A wig was handed to me. The strand slid over my shoulders as I carefully positioned it on my head, adjusting it with shaking fingers. Every adjustment felt like surrender, another step away from the person I had always been. Next came the makeup. A brush touched my skin. Powder.
Color.
Each small detail deepened the transformation. I wanted to resist. I wanted to fight it. But fear froze my will. And deep inside, a guilty spark of fascination flickered to life. By the time the process ended, the person staring back from the mirror barely resembled the man who had been dragged into the van that morning. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered once before settling into a constant hum. The man who had orchestrated everything pointed to another tray. This one held even more elaborate garments. Soft chiffon skirts, lacy stockings, shoes so delicate they looked almost impossible to walk in. Everything was arranged carefully, deliberately, like a display meant to eliminate any illusion of escape. My hands hovered uncertainly above the items. The truth struck me like ice water. I had no choice. Every instinct screamed to resist, but the earlier restraints had left their mark, not on my body alone, but on my confidence. Begin, the voice instructed. There is no turning back. Slowly, I pulled the chiffon skirt into place. The fabric brushed against my legs in a way that felt surreal. My pulse pounded, not just because of the act itself, but because of what it meant. With each piece of clothing, Alex seemed to fade further away. The stocking slid over my legs next, clinging to the skin in a way that felt strangely intimate. The sensation twisted my stomach with both fear and awareness. Someone was watching,
Guiding.
shaping me into something I hadn't chosen. The blouse followed, soft materials settling over my shoulders. When I looked up again, the mirror showed someone unfamiliar. The wig framed my face with gentle strands. Carefully applied makeup made my eyes appear wider, softer. My lips, brushed with pale color, completed the illusion. Breathing became difficult, not just from panic, but from the overwhelming sensation of change. Before, my experiments had always happened in secrecy, under my control. Now, control belonged entirely to someone else. The shoes were the final step. Delicate, unstable. They forced my posture to shift as I carefully stood. Each step across the polished floor echoed loudly in the sterile room, making my vulnerability impossible to ignore. A faint smile crossed the observer's face. "You look different," he said. "But this is only the beginning." I tried to respond, but my voice refused to cooperate. Though the restraints were gone, the feeling of captivity remained. Soon they guided me toward a full-length mirror. I stopped instantly. The figure staring back looked almost like a stranger. My posture had changed. My movements had become cautious and delicate. The clothing emphasized shapes and lines I had never truly noticed before. Slowly, trembling fingers reached toward my face, touching my cheek, my lips, the smooth strands of hair. Each contact reinforced the truth. The transformation was no longer theoretical. It was real. A wave of conflicting emotions swept through me, fear tangled with a strange exhilaration I couldn't explain. The reflection wasn't just a disguise. It was a glimpse of another life. Then came the next challenge. Walking. The heels forced me to shift my balance, making every step deliberate. My hips moved differently, my posture adapting despite my hesitation. "You'll learn," the observer said calmly. "Eventually you won't remember who you were before." The words cut deep. Forget who I was? Lose Alex entirely? I shook my head instinctively, but a small forbidden thrill still stirred inside me. Hours seemed to pass, or maybe only minutes. Time blurred as every movement became part of their strange lesson. Walking, standing, holding accessories they placed in my hands. A necklace, bracelets, a small clutch. "Carry yourself as her," the voice instructed. "Move naturally. Speak naturally." I had never imagined being forced into such complete immersion. It wasn't just clothing anymore.
It was identity.
By the time the exercises ended, exhaustion weighed heavily on me. Yet something deeper had changed.
Fear. Shame.
Excitement. A strange, unsettling freedom. All of it clashed inside my chest. When I stared into the mirror again, the truth became impossible to ignore. Alex still existed in name, but everything else was being rewritten. The room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in as anticipation and panic surged through me. Then the man stepped forward with a clipboard. "Today," he said casually, "you leave this room." My breath caught. "You will interact with the world as she would." The words hit like a shock. Leave? Go outside like this? My hands trembled as I adjusted the skirt. The heels clicked sharply against the floor. "You can do it," he added calmly. "Or you can suffer the consequences." Slowly, reluctantly, I walked toward the door. Every step felt unreal. The hallway beyond stretched long and sterile beneath flickering lights. At the far end, someone waited. A woman holding a folder. Professional.
Calm.
Part of the experiment. Part of the trap. "Alex," she said softly. Her voice was soothing in a way that made my skin crawl. "It's all right. Just follow instructions." I nodded weakly. She led me into another room lined with mirrors and small cameras hidden in the corners. "Act naturally," she said. "Be her." I swallowed. "I'm not her." She smiled faintly. "You will be," she replied. "Or you fail." My eyes closed for a moment as the weight of everything pressed down on me. And when I opened them again, the person staring back from the mirror looked ready to step into a world that no longer belonged to Alex. For a moment, I closed my eyes and drew in a shaky breath. This was no longer just clothing or makeup. It wasn't a disguise I could remove whenever I wished. I was being pushed fully into an identity that I had never chosen, one forced upon me without warning, without permission, and without any way to escape. My pulse hammered wildly in my chest, fueled by fear and by a strange, forbidden excitement I couldn't completely suppress. The first test appeared simple. Too simple. They placed me in front of a screen and told me I would speak to someone on the other side. A stranger. My task was straightforward. Introduce myself as the person I now appeared to be. Smile. Speak gently. Laugh, if necessary. Simple gestures. Yet every movement felt monumental. My fingers trembled as they rested against the small clutch in my hand. I lifted my chin carefully and forced my voice to remain soft and steady. Every syllable felt like it might betray me, like the truth of who I had been would spill out uncontrollably. But somehow I made it through. "Good," the woman observing said once the conversation ended. "You're adapting." Her calm tone offered no comfort. Now we moved to the next stage. The next stage was far worse. They led me into what looked like an artificial street built inside the facility. Lights simulated daylight, storefronts lined the walls, and several people stood scattered along the path. Actors. Participants in the test. My heels struck the pavement with sharp, echoing clicks as I stepped forward. People glanced at me. Some whispered. Others laughed quietly. Their attention made my stomach twist. A mirrored wall stretched along one side of the street, reflecting every step I took. I could see my own uncertainty magnified in that glass. One of the actors approached. He stepped just a little too close. "Nice outfit," he said with a teasing grin. "You sure you belong out here?" Heat flooded my face instantly. My steps faltered. Panic surged through me as I tried to respond politely, but the words tangled somewhere in my throat. Inside my mind, everything felt like it was splitting apart. Alex struggled beneath the surface, while the fragile persona they had forced onto me tried desperately to hold together. Behind the mirror, the woman watched silently. "Focus," she instructed sharply through a speaker. Yet there was the faintest hint of approval in her voice. "You can handle this." I inhaled slowly and forced myself to continue walking. Each step felt like balancing over a deep drop. Terror pulled one way while a strange, intoxicating thrill tugged the other. My thoughts raced.
I'm Alex.
But I'm also her. The next problem arrived suddenly. The clutch slipped from my fingers and crashed onto the pavement. The sound echoed sharply. I froze. Every head seemed to turn toward me. Embarrassment burned through my chest. My instinct screamed to abandon the act, to rip away the clothes and run. But that option no longer existed. Slowly, I bent down, my legs trembling in the unfamiliar heels. As I reached for the clutch, my reflection caught my eye again in the mirrored wall. For a moment, I simply stared. The face looking back was delicate, nervous, yet strangely beautiful. A realization struck me with unsettling clarity. I was beginning to understand what life felt like within this role, this identity they were forcing me to inhabit. "Excellent," the observer said once I stood again. "You recovered well." Her approval did nothing to calm my racing heart. "The next scenario will push you further." I barely heard her words. The reflection of that fragile figure lingered in my mind. Then came the final challenge of the day. A confrontation. Actors surrounded me, creating tension deliberately. One bumped into my shoulder while another commented loudly about my appearance. Suddenly, I was the center of attention. Every instinct screamed for escape, but I had to stay composed. My voice remained calm even as my hands trembled. Every movement felt like walking along a razor's edge. Then something strange happened. The mirror beside the street cracked slightly, just a thin fracture spreading through the reflection. For a second, panic flooded my mind. Was the glass breaking? Or was it only in my head? The distortion warped my image, twisting the reflection into something unfamiliar. "This can't be real," I thought desperately. Yet the test continued as if nothing had happened. The observers watched. The actors pressed forward. And I realized with a sinking certainty that nothing about this place was normal anymore. What had once been a private curiosity, something secret and thrilling, had become something far more intense. Something unavoidable. When the session finally ended, exhaustion overwhelmed me. My body trembled with fatigue. Sweat clung to my skin. I had survived the test, but it had taken everything I had. My reflection stared back from the mirror. Delicate, feminine, and barely connected to the man I once recognized. Then the voice returned.
"Calm, cold."
"Tomorrow," the observer said, "you step into the real world." A chill spread through me. "And you will do so as her." The weight of those words settled heavily in my chest. There would be no controlled environment tomorrow. No actors. No rehearsals. Just real people. Real reactions.
And me.
Fear surged again, but beneath it lingered the same strange thrill. I had been pushed further than I had ever imagined possible. The ride back in the van was silent. The engine hummed softly as my thoughts replayed every moment of the day. My legs ached from the heels. My fingers still trembled. When I glanced at the dark window beside me, my reflection stared back, soft features framed by carefully arranged hair. Someone I barely knew. "Tomorrow," the driver said quietly from the front seat, "the world will only see her." My stomach dropped. The van slowed to a stop outside a large concrete building. The doors opened. "Out," the voice instructed. My heels clicked sharply against the pavement as I stepped down. The air outside felt colder, sharper. "Ready or not," the voice murmured behind me, "there's no turning back." I tried to speak. Nothing came out. The glass door ahead reflected my appearance clearly. A fragile, elegant figure stood there. Someone who wasn't supposed to exist. Then the door opened. A woman stepped outside.
Tall.
Confident. Her eyes locked onto me instantly. She studied me carefully. Recognition flickered in her expression. I froze. Then a single word cut through the air. "Alex." My heart nearly stopped. I turned toward the voice. It was Mia. She must have returned earlier than expected. Her expression shifted between confusion and suspicion. "What are you doing?" she asked slowly. "And who are you?" The question struck like a blow. I wanted to explain everything, but no explanation could bridge the distance between Alex and the person standing before her now. Behind me, the orchestrator remained silent, observing the moment like another experiment, another test. Mia stepped closer. "You need to tell me what's going on." My mouth opened, but no words came. The world seemed to pause around us. Then a phone screen nearby lit up with a message. Not from Mia. Not from me. From someone else entirely. "She's outside. Don't let her get away." Cold fear ran through my veins. Suddenly, the situation felt far more dangerous than before. The van still waited behind me. Mia stood in front of me. The observer watched silently. And my reflection in the glass shimmered between two identities. I realized something terrifying in that moment. Everything that had happened so far was only the beginning.